Welcome back. So when we last left off, we left off inside of our application. So we are continuing with our console application. This console application we named Hello World. Now, inside of this, I gave you time to practice writing things to the console. So right now, you should at least have a few things written to the console, just as a review. Let me go ahead and allow you to write something to the console. So what I want you to write to the console is I want you to write hello and then whatever your name is. Go ahead and pause the video right now, give that a try, and then come on back and we'll do it together. All right, welcome back. So hopefully you have something that looks a little bit like this. So again, to start writing to the console, we are going to put in the console so that we can find the console class, use dot notation, and on this we are looking for a write line. So we'll start typing in write. There's the write line. I'll go ahead and press tab on that. And then inside of here, we want to write a message to the console. So we're going to put it in a string. And inside the string, I'm going to say hello, Emery, or whatever name that you put. And remember, we have this console.read line here because the application is going to go in and it's going to read this line. It's going to print this to the console. It's going to get to this line and then it's going to wait for us to give it some sort of response or keystroke before the console window decides to just disappear. All right, so we should have this. And if we have no red squigglies, and if we go down here and look at our error list, if this is clear, then we have no errors. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So again, to run the application, you can either press to start here, or you can hit F5 on your keyboard. So I'm gonna go the F5 route. The application compiles, and there we go. Hello, Henry, or whatever you're saying. Good job. All right, now let's get into some fun stuff. First of all, before we continue on, I want to show you a little shortcut. Now don't get used to these shortcuts, but shortcuts help you to be more productive. And in C#, they have what is called code snippets. And code snippets are little snippets of code that we will constantly use, so they give you an easier way or a shortcut to make that happen. And so this console.write line starting out is going to be something that we are going to use all the time. Anytime we want to print a message to the console for the user, whether we're asking the user the question or giving the user information, we want to write out to the console so that they can see this, right? Any prompts, anything. So write line is going to become extremely valuable. In that case, with the write line, instead of having to write it all out, as we have been doing, you can enter in CW. And you'll notice that we get this little IntelliSense and it gives us the CW and it says console.writeLine. Beautiful, that's what we want. Once you hit CW, you can go ahead and hit tab twice. And there it is, our console write line. Again, this will just make you more productive. All right. Go ahead and give that a try again on your own. So it's CW, tab. Beautiful. All right. Erase all of this. We are done with this now. We're going to keep this. And we're going to start off with a clean slate. So today's focus is we're going to learn some data types. Now, data in C# is stored in a specific type. C# is known as a strongly typed language, meaning that we need to explicitly call out what data types we are going to use. Now, don't do any typing. I'm just going to list some of the data types. So, one of the data types we're going to look at are strings. We've been working with strings. Strings look like this. You have two quotes, and then you have words inside of those. This is how you know it is going to be a string. Now I'm doing something new here. So you'll notice that we have no red squigglies here, but this also is a different color than we've been used to seeing. This double slash here creates a comment. And a comment in your code is something that the compiler or Visual Studio will not look at. It will ignore this line right here whenever it goes to run the program. Why does it do that? It does that so that we can use this as a means to document our code as we're walking through it. So some developers may use this as, let me write out my steps. Let me give notes to myself as to what this piece of code is doing. So whatever you find use for it, in this case, I'm using it as a means to show you all the data types. But again, it's just going to be something that's going to be ignored by the compiler. So as a new developer, I say comment as often as you need to, so that when you come back to the code, you understand what this piece of code was doing. For instance, the console.readline. For me, as a new developer, I would go ahead and put a comment above this and say, this reads text from the console. Right, so now when I come back to this and I'm like, what does this console.readline do? Oh, it reads text from the console. Yeah, I remember that now. So that is a little tooltip for you, but we'll continue on. So string is a data type, and this is what a string would look like. Another popular data type we will use is int, which is short for integer, and this means any whole number. So not any numbers with decimals. We want a whole number. So a 3 or 45 or 135, any whole number. It can also be any negative whole number. It cannot be 2.5. All right. Let's just work with these two for right now, and then we'll introduce some more data types later on. But for now, let's work with strings, and we're going to work with integers. Start out with strings. So in C#, we have these little storage boxes of memory, and they are called variables. Now, variables hold any value that we decide to store inside of it so that we can use it throughout the program. So for instance, if I wanted to store my name in a box so that I can use that name wherever and throughout my code, I would do it this way. So we start out with the data type. In this case, we want it to be string. And all data types will have a lowercase letter, and you'll see that string is lowercase. So ST, and then until it says brings it up for us right here, and I can go ahead and press tab. It'll be a different color, letting us know that this is a keyword. So we start with the string, the data type, we give it a space. We have to give this data type a name. Now we name this anything that we want to, but when you're naming your variables, you want to name your variables with specific. You want your variables to be specific, and you want them to make sense in the context of your application. All right, so in this case, I'm going to store a name. Let's be more specific than name. I'm going to store my first name inside of this variable. So to write that out, you would assume that you would go first space name. But you cannot do that. In code, again, we want it to just be one run-on word, and to give it a little style and make it different so that we can recognize and read it, we will use what is called camel case. And in camel case, the first letter of the first word is lowercase, so first. And then any letter or any word after the first word, its first letter is going to be capital. First name. Just like that. This is camel case. And then if we stop right here, we have just declared a variable and we named it first name. I want you guys to take a moment and declare another variable right beneath this. And I want this variable to hold the last name. Think that through. Think of all the things you need to do. Take a couple minutes, pause the video, and make it happen. All right, welcome back. So hopefully you got something that looks a little like this. We start with our data type. We do camel case, last name, and then we terminate that statement with our semicolon. There it is. So now we have two variables declared. We have one for first name and we have one for last name. Now, we have these places ready to hold something. They're like empty boxes, but currently there is nothing inside either of these boxes. Which in this case, if I hover over mine, it tells me the variable last name is declared but never used. Meaning that I have not used this, nor can I use this because it has no value. There's nothing stored inside. So I'm going to put a note up here to let myself know that this is declaring variable. All right, so now that we've declared a variable, the next thing we want to do is we want to give this variable a value. And this is called initializing a variable. So to initialize a variable, to give it value, to store something inside this box, we need to first call the variable that we want to use by name. So we want to store our first name in the variable called first name. So to call it by name, we start typing in first name. And you'll see that Visual Studio recognizes that there is a variable called first name. And we'll go ahead and tab. And now we want to set that equal to. The equal is a assignment operator, meaning that it will assign a value to whatever comes on the other side of this is what's going to be stored in the variable first name. Now we know that we want to put a string inside of first name. Let's see what that looks like. So I could just type in Hemery, right? This is what I want to store inside of first name. But I'm going to get an issue. It's going to say that the name Hemery does not exist in the current context because it thinks that I'm trying to call a variable. It doesn't know that this is a string that I'm trying to store inside of here. And so what I need to do is I need to store Hemery between two quotations. And this lets us know that this is a string. And the last thing I do is I terminate that statement. There it is. Hemery is now stored in first name. So now I can use first name instead of having to call my name. And we'll see what that means in just a moment here. But for right now, I want you to take about 15, 30 seconds, and I want you to store your first name. If you've not done this so far, store your first name inside the variable first name. And then I also want you to store your last name inside the variable last name. Right, pause the video here and come back when you're done. All right, and now we're back. So hopefully you have something that looks like this. We're modeling this. And the next line here, now we're going to store our last name in the variable last name. So we're going to call it again by name. I type in the L, there it is, last name, that's the one I want. I'm gonna go ahead and tab, equals. Whenever it's a string, immediately just go ahead and put the double quotations. There it is. And I'm gonna put my last name there inside. And then I will terminate this. And so you should have something that looks a little like that. So here we declared two variables of type string, name first name and last name. Here we initialize those two variables with values. First name has the value of Hemery, last name has the value of Pfeiffer. All right, now we're ready. Now we're ready to work with this. We can do something with this. What can we do to this? We can print this to the console. Let's give that a try. So using the code snippet that I taught you earlier, I want you to give me a console.write line. Think about it. Okay, if you don't remember, let me help you out. CW, tab, tab. There we go. We got a console.write line. Now, I just want to write my first name to the console. Now, since first name is a box that holds Hemery, I could just call first name, and first name is going to print here whatever's inside the box. So if I type in first name, it goes in there. Nothing's wrong. This is all good. So put first name inside the console.write line. And then we'll run the application and you'll see first name. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, go back. Do another console.write line right beneath this one, right here. Now write out last name and see what happens. So if you did it correctly, last name should look something like this. We go ahead and run this. And there we go. First name on the top, last name on the bottom there. Now you notice that previously when we were writing messages in our console.write line, we were putting things inside of quotation marks. Now, why do you think we do not have to use quotation marks with these guys? If your answer is because these are representations of strings that are already stored in memory, then you would be correct, right? We already have values for these that are strings. Now, there's no difference between this and me literally putting memory in here. They're essentially representing the same thing. The difference is now instead of having to do this every time, I can just call this variable. And this makes a lot of sense if you're going to use this variable over and over and over throughout your application. Instead of having to write whatever information is in there over and over, whatever values in there over and over, you just call the variable. Strings can hold more than just one word. In fact, they can hold paragraphs. And if I decided I wanted to store a paragraph in this box, this saves me the time of having to recall that paragraph over and over or write out that paragraph over and over because I would just have to call first name. right? Let me demonstrate that just real quick. Don't do this, just watch on the screen. So let's say instead of first name, I just type in a bunch of letters, right? We have all these letters. Beautiful. Now, for one, there's no way in the world I can remember this string of letters in their correct order. But I don't have to, because if I replace this with first name has all of this stored inside this box right here. So if I run this, I get all of that. There it is. I don't have to remember that. That is the beauty of having variables. All right, so I hope that hits home there. The last thing we are going to do here is we are going to work with concatenation. Now, you're probably wondering, first of all, what is concatenation? And second of all, why do I need it? So concatenation is the adding of two different strings, right? In this case, let me take this back and make this my name again so this makes sense. All right. So let's say that instead of having Hemery on this line and Pfeiffer on this line, I want it all to be together. I want it to say Hemery, Pfeiffer. Now, one would think that to make that happen, I could just somehow put last name in here, right? But there's an issue. It's giving me a red squiggly. And it's also not giving me a very good error message of why this is happening. But I'll tell you why. It is happening because it doesn't know what to do with these two strings, right? These represent string values, and it doesn't know what to do with those guys. And we want to combine them so that they make one sentence or one word. Not one word, one sentence, sorry. So let me get rid of this guy. So what we want to do is we want to do a thing called concatenation. And all this really means is that we want to add this string to this string. And to do that, we simply put a plus between those two. That's it. Put a plus between these guys, and it's going to create a string that has first name and last name together. Go ahead and take a look at that. So just to cover again, we have declared a string with the name of first name, another string with the name of last name. We have given it a value of Hemery. We've given this a value of Pfeiffer, and now we are concatenating first name with last name to have one string, and then we're going to write that out to the console. So if I run this, there it is, Hemery, Pfeiffer, or whatever you put. Now I know you're probably wondering, wait, but I mean, you did the thing, but why are they smashed together? That doesn't look good, Hemery. I agree. How can we fix that? So this is how we can make that happen. So we want a space between first name and last name, correct? To make that happen, we can add string literals, which is us just putting a word in between two quotation marks. So a string literal will look like this. So we put that plus there, we give it a space, we'll do double quotes. And inside of this, Visual Studio will read a space if we just put a space. So it's an empty string, but it's going to read this space that's happening right there. And then we put another plus sign. No, not that guy. That guy. Plus sign right here. So what's happening here is we're taking first name, we're adding or tacking onto that a space, we're tacking onto this last name. And so this will create a string that will give first name space last name. And if we run that, there it is. We get it written the way that we want it. All right, beautiful job, beautiful job. We will continue this in our next video as we walk through some more string concatenation and other ways that we can concatenate or add strings together that makes life a little easier for us. But for now, practice these things, practice declaring string variables. If you get a chance, look up other data types within C# and start playing with those, and we'll talk about those later. Practice initializing, practice concatenating, and writing things out to your console. You're getting there. You should be proud of yourself. Until next time, this is Henry over at DevYou.